Hello, so today I'm going to be just making a pretty casual video talking about all of the different creative phases that I've gone through in my life. I've had it in the back of my head that I've wanted to make a video kind of along these lines for quite a while. For the few of you who have been following me for a long time, I made kind of a similar thing in 2018, where I just talked about all of the art that I'd made up until that point and how I felt about it. But now there's been, I guess, so much progression since that point, and a lot of what I said about those pieces doesn't even really hold true anymore. And it just it didn't really feel like that video defined me much as an artist anymore, so I just kind of took it down. But yeah, I just wanted to tell you right off the bat, this video is going to be pretty personal. I'm going to be talking about myself, so if you're not interested, which is perfectly understandable, that's what this video is going to be for the entire time, and it's not going to be scripted or anything. I'm just gonna be speaking off top, so if it does end up being a mess, I apologize in advance. But yeah, I mean, I never make videos to where I'm not following a script, because I want to make every sentence perfect, if you feel me. But yeah, I feel like there's kind of almost like a disconnect between me and the people who watch me, just a little bit for that reason, because you very rarely see me in just like my raw state, so I kind of want to change that. And also, I just have nothing to do right now because, long story short, I've hit a wall. I don't want to bore you with the details, but through a lot of self-reflection, I've just realized that my sort of inability to create recently has come from this incredible numbness that I think is influenced by this for some reason, when I feel really bad, I have this immediate next thought that I should stop feeling that way, because it's not productive, and also it doesn't seem that significant in the grand scheme of my life and the lives of everyone else living on this planet, really. I've sort of, I guess, recently I feel like developed a wider perspective on how little ultimately my pain in the moment is or means, and that taking that mindset so far has caused me to try to just not feel the lows that are kind of inevitable for the type of depression that I have, to where my head just starts to reject every positive thought that I have. And I feel like the fact that I'm actively getting frustrated at myself for feeling this way is just backfiring and making it that much worse. And it's resulted in this just incredible emptiness and just space in my brain that I couldn't describe if I tried, but it's totally killed my creative instinct, because ultimately, where I draw all of my inspiration is from my personal emotions. And that's what has always made it so fulfilling. So I just need to, keep getting to the root of why I'm doing this and try to fight it. But yeah, also it's just that the stress has kind of been winning recently. Um, like making reviews in the way that I was caused me to sort of sacrifice personal health, honestly. I was waking up super early. It was all I was thinking about was making my reviews as good as they could possibly be. And it just affected my ability to prioritize anything else, and I don't want to stay in that state, at least not right now. It doesn't seem worth it. And I think, honestly, throughout a lot of my life, but mostly in the past 2 years, the most difficult thing to figure out is how to strike a balance between just health and creating as much as I want to, and in a way that is personally satisfying and fulfilling. And I'm convinced that that will always be one of the greatest I guess, obstacles that I deal with in my life, assuming I continue to be an artist. But I hit this wall so full force that I feel like the only way to go forwards is to kind of go backwards in a sense and just approach things a bit more casually, how I used to. Still bring the heart, but, you know, just not necessarily be so caught up in every little word I say being perfect. And I have a few ideas for things that I want to do. I want to do a roundup. I don't know if that's ever gonna fucking happen. It's been in process for like forever, but new albums come out all the time, so it's like, fuck, this will never be done. I want to do a video where I talk about 5 to 10 artists that have sort of changed the way that I think about the world. Like those types of artists to where like I'll listen to them and then they'll just pop back up in my head like in the middle of the day when I'm doing something else. That's kind of how I like to define like one of my favorite artists, is that the idea of them just like lingers in my brain. It's just like if I never come on this channel and talk about these artists, I'll always regret it, because I feel like when I'm listening to them, I like just want to put how I feel about them somewhere so badly, because it just, again, stays in my brain. And I feel like when I distance myself from reviewing new albums, I can just see so clearly that they're the most valuable thing that I've ever gotten out of this. And yeah, I just feel like I'll always regret it if I don't just like ramble about how much I love them somewhere at some point. So that's kind of what I want to do next. But let's get into the actual meat of the video. So I'm gonna go back as far as I guess I feel like is relevant. I'll try not to spend too much time on the early stuff, but I just personally think that it's kind of interesting to see how even when I was like 10 years old, there were aspects of my personality that still have held true to this day. I just think that that's kind of funny. It's like you feel like you're changing all the time, but then you can see patterns and kind of realize that like the core of who you are has always been the same. Anywho, so the first time that I guess started taking art seriously in any sort of way was when I was like 10 years old. And funnily enough, I think that that's a word, but I don't know. It was because I made this friend that I was like so infatuated with just as a human being, as a friend, not romantically, but when I met her, it just felt like I was like opening a book. Like there was just so much to her that sort of interested me. And she, like her whole family is full of working artists, just super creative and driven people. And so I kind of noticed that, and she would just like sketch all of the time, just constantly. And because I wanted to be exactly like her, I started to do the same, right? We would always sketch like animals at this time. I think she has a completely different style now. I have not talked to her in years. And I honestly don't really know, but I know that the idea of becoming really good at drawing sort of got into my brain that way. And I guess through this period in my life, I developed like a set of sort of like decent-ish understanding of things like proportion and shading. I don't know, just like the basic principles of how to be a good realistic drawer or renderer, I suppose. But it was never really about me in this time. I was like 10. I was just doing it because I saw that she was so into this thing and I thought it was cool, and I was like, yeah, trying to hop on that. But also, there is this element to this girl that I find kind of interesting to think about now. To my knowledge, she's not a religious person, but she is a very spiritually sort of connected person. We used to use this like Ouija board-esque thing. It's like the same concept really, but it was supposed to only let in good spirits as opposed to the Ouija board, which in theory, you know, you could just like end up with any fucking evil ass demon if you use it, and that thing could ruin your life. At least that is how it's supposed to be. But there are a lot of like little sort of niche elements of spirituality that she kind of introduced the idea of in my brain and made me aware that it existed. I wish I had better concrete examples, but I do remember that around this time I like felt, this is where I start to sound like a loon. Okay, so just know that I'm aware of this, but I felt a strong desire to like just run away from home and not be where I was. I guess in either like the mortal world or just around humans that I knew. And there was this strong sense of like, I'm adventurous. I want to like learn how to be a hermit and live by myself in the woods. Yeah, this is fucking weird, but I know that I felt that way very strongly for some reason. Um, it occupied a lot of space in my brain. And I guess the reason why I kind of bring this up now is because very low key, kind of still feel that in some respect. And the spirituality thing I bring up because I've just noticed that all the music that, well, not all of it, but a lot of music that has some sort of spiritual quality or theme to it just strikes me in a very personal kind of way now. Obviously, it's more of like an apocalyptic occult sort of thing, but I can kind of attribute a lot of this to my obsession with Current 93. That's a whole other thing. But it kind of blew my mind when I made the connection between a lot of the things that Current 93 make me think of and the images that they put in my brain and this phase of my life and like where my head was at. I don't know. Another thing that I wanted to bring up from this time is this weird fucking thing I did. Like a year or two later, it would have been like 6th grade. I started writing this novel. And it ended up being like, I think like 40, 50 like word document pages. So it was pretty long for someone of that age, I guess. It wasn't like a legit novel, nor was it very good. But I also remembered that I did this recently, and it was really weird. What I was trying to do actually kind of has a lot of relevance to me, like elements of the plot. It was like about this girl who like went to another planet and became this like creature thing, and it was like once you entered the planet you just become this like totally blank body, but you have like wings and like spikes coming out of your back and these weird face markings. And there was like this whole plot to where they were like fighting this evil spirit dude. And what they had to do for some reason was find these like objects, bricks, like, and once they found them, it would like give them another piece of the plot and reveal something about who they are that would like allow them to continue in into the plot. And also there was like a song tied into each one of like the bricks as well. Like when they found it, it would like play the song, right? Fucking weird shit, lame shit, honestly, but it's just weird because like all of these things. Like, I can tell why I wrote a story about this. I don't know. And then there was a span of time in like seventh grade and the following, like, I guess 4 or so years to where I wasn't taking things as seriously as I was before. And I had phases with a lot of things, like artistic hobbies that I almost got into, but they didn't really stick around. Like, I started to learn how to play guitar. I tried to get into photography at one point. Um, yeah, and I think that the one thing that I actually, oh, there was also like, this isn't like creative, but there was a point in time to where I just decided spontaneously that I wanted to learn a bunch of foreign languages, and sort of skewed my school schedule to allow me to do that. um, the one thing that I can kind of get out of this now, and like a conclusion that I can draw from this period of my life, is that I just have a really obsessive personality, to be honest. For some reason, I just have this instinct to want to get super into one thing and let that sort of, I want to say, like, save me from the rest of the world. Like, there was a period in early high school to where I was super obsessed with 21 Pilots. You heard it here directly. I think I saw them live like 10 times around this point. Um, there was a period in time to where I was like super into YouTubers. I went to like VidCon a couple of years, so you can kind of see that it was like, it was always just one thing, and then I would eventually like drop that one thing and want to move on to another thing. But in the periods of time to where I was into that thing, I genuinely thought it was like rest of my life, this is what gives me purpose. And I don't know, I just find it kind of weird because even now, like, I feel like it's just that one thing that's occupying space in my head, and I'm so obsessed with it and invested in it, and then I hit a wall. That's all. And I ended up getting back into just straight up fine art again around like 10th grade or so. And I started sketching again, but this time everything that I sketched was just shit that I liked. It was all pretty random shit. It would have just been like, I don't know, places that I wanted to go, people that inspired me, or like just even just like if I like fucking pineapple, I would draw a pineapple. Like, I wasn't really thinking about what I was doing, but the point is that there was some element of like, I'm personally invested in this thing, so that is why I'm drawing it, rather than just sort of like drawing a shit ton of wolves because my friend loved the way that wolves looked. And yeah, so that was a thing. And around 10th grade as well is when I got really depressed. I don't know, depression is sort of a hard thing to wrap your head around. I don't know if this is just something that I was born with and always kind of destined to have, or if it was influenced by outside factors, such as me not really ever fitting in socially or feeling like I did. I mean, that's a whole other video. I could talk about it for just hours and hours, but um, things weren't great. Like, I've always definitely felt like a total fucking loner, and that got a lot worse and more extreme in high school. And in addition to that, my home life was not good, because my parents divorced, but it wasn't really that. It was the fact that my dad moved away and my siblings went to college, and then that just left me and my mom living together in high school. And my mom and I do not have a good relationship at all. And I kind of couldn't do anything about it for those 4 years. And I had to just stick it out. and it left me feeling really, really trapped all the time. And yeah, I think that is what kind of kicked up the sadness for me. So I kind of decided that I was going to go back to fine art as a means of sort of distracting from everything else. I decided I was going to get super, super good at it. I filled up my schedule with I ended up quitting high school band and like my languages in order to just take a ton of art classes, like electives, and I did a shit ton of like assignments in those classes, just random shit that I like, I can go back and see now. Oh yeah, I remember fucking doing that, but it was just like random assorted shit, not really focused or anything like that, that I have from that time. But I don't know, like my AP art concentration, would that have been 11th grade? Yeah. In 11th grade, which for those of you who don't know, it's just a series of 12 pieces, and I think you can do really anything you want. So it's like more of a personally driven thing. You have to have like, you have to put some amount of heart into it. I just did like these tree drawing things, which were basically inspired by my connection to nature and solitude, yada yada. And I think these still look fucking really cool. But besides that, it was a lot of like realistically based stuff and just stuff that I'm not that excited about anymore from this time period. But how the depression started to like show up in my art is this pre-college program that I went to, which how that works is basically it's like you take a college class. It's like a summer camp. It's like you go, but you take a legit college class and you dorm with people who want to like sort of go to the school that you're at. That's how it is for art schools. A lot of them have these pre-college programs to like show you sort of what it's like. And mine was at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, which I didn't actually end up going to. And it's really ironic because I think I had more fun in these 2 weeks than I had in like 2 years of time at Pratt. No shade to Pratt, of course. Kisses to Pratt. I love you. I really think that it was kind of just by chance. Everything just sort of worked out for me. I made a couple of friends that I like just loved and kept in touch with for a decent amount of time after I ended up leaving, so they sort of enhanced the experience. But my professor, this guy, just like drilled into us that every single thing we made had to be conceptual, no questions asked, and he was very cutthroat about it. He kind of tore us apart. And we sort of like went into this thing somewhat confident, like thinking that we were pretty good artists, pretty good at what we did, but he just like fucking crushed our hopes and dreams. But I now know in retrospect that it was for a good cause. And I remember in the first few, I guess it would have been first few days or week, in the first part of the class, there was this time we were painting a model in front of us, and he went around to everyone's piece and he asked, so what does this mean? Like, you need to have one word that describes like the meaning of what you're doing and convince me of it. And everyone was like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck is this guy doing? I'm just painting this dude because he told me to. But like now we were forced to just like from nothing just come up with something. So he came around to me. I was like, fuck. He left, and I decided my word was infatuation. And this dude was, lying down and like desperate for this person that he was infatuated with. This is how it ended up looking. Like, I don't really have much of an opinion on this piece now, just because I know I only did this because I was forced to do it, but in retrospect, this represented a turning point, because it forced me to understand what truly occupies space in my brain, I guess, or like a lot of it, like what is a lot of what I honestly think about. And at like 16, 17, it was a dude that I was infatuated with, and it was depression. And I guess how those two correlate as well. So I understood sort of from this point on that if I was going to be making shit about this, which didn't really clock in my head until I guess I left. I made another piece there. I hated it. I still hate it. I don't even have a photo of it. But I just know that after I left this place, everything just looked different. Like, I immediately just started to change shit that I had already made, like realistic shit, and try to make it look more emotionally charged. And it always, most of the time, came down to either sadness or desire. And it was just such a, like, drastic mindset change, I guess, that inspired in me. And along with it came the understanding that anytime I made anything about these things, it would just make me really vulnerable. But I fell in love with the fact that what I was making actually like sent a message or represented a piece of my deeper self, I suppose. And yeah, it seemed worth it. Like, it seemed like feeling vulnerable or kind of stupid was like a small price to pay, because it had never clocked in my head that I could feel this intimately connected to what I was creating until then. And this is something I made in the summer between 11th and 12th grade, I remember, and it's just like, this piece in particular is really just funny to look at to me, because I remember at the time I didn't like this piece because I didn't like the way that I shaded my face. And now I like can so clearly see that that's not the point, even remotely. And it's actually pretty dope. Gets some kind of reaction out of me still, even though I never make anything even slightly realistic anymore, but we'll get to that. And then this is another painting that I did in between 11th and 12th grade that I think turned out pretty cool. I did this because this was around the time that I was applying to art school. So I was applying to RISD, the Rhode Island School of Design. Super hard to get into. I didn't get in, but we were given a prompt that we were supposed to deconstruct something as like a part of the application. And I decided I'm gonna deconstruct the emotional makeup of a human being. So I made it half realistic, and then I pulled apart parts of a skeleton, and then in between the cracks tried to represent different emotions. And looking back, this has a way more like agonized sort of feel to it than I even like acknowledged at the time. Like, it was all supposed to, every section was supposed to evoke something different, but the only thing that actually ended up evoking anything was really dark. So this painting is really fucking dark looking. I remember this painting scared the shit out of my mom. Ugh, shout out to Sharon. But yeah, that's that. I still think this piece is pretty dope. And then it was my senior year of high school. I don't think anything that I made for class was ever that personal until the second half of the year, because I had to do another concentration, like I was talking about before, and with the trees, but this time it was for AP drawing instead of AP 2D design, like pretty similar things, but I decided this time that I was gonna make totally abstract paintings, which it had always been a thing that when I would look at other art, I would get the most excited about completely abstract work. But I had no idea, like, how the fuck to go about making it myself. Because, I mean, I was terrified that it would just look like I was just, putting splotches of paint on a canvas aimlessly. And I didn't know how to organize, like, abstract painting. Like, I just didn't know how the hell to do it. But I decided that I was just gonna go for it because I like wanted to start making abstract work so badly, and I knew deep down that that was sort of what I always wanted. I just wanted to go full on abstract, but I was sort of falling back on my realistic skills to ensure that everything I made was like at least passable. But yeah, I just decided to go full on into the emotional, I suppose, and I actually decided that each piece was going to be based on a song this time. So this is essentially like what I've when I stopped painting, I was still making shit, abstract shit inspired by music. So this is like the point where I realized that this is actually what I want to do. But these paintings kind of suck. I mean, like, some of them are passable, but some of them also just look like I had no idea what I was doing because I didn't. And I remember feeling like a total idiot when I was making these in class, because I would just come in with these gigantic canvases and just like kind of like, put shit down and just like squint and just probably look like a fucking idiot. I was like aware that people were probably looking at my piece like, what on earth is she doing? Because everyone else was just doing some realistic stuff. But now I know that like that feeling of, oh my god, I look like such an idiot, what the fuck am I doing? I know nothing, is very essential to getting anywhere in anything. So, and I just wanted it so bad that I didn't care. I just wanted to get somewhere eventually. So I just did this, and yeah. And music. I mean, I haven't even talked about music at all, really, in this whole video. But, became a music nerd around 2015 or so. So music was kind of the thing that was always in my head. I would go to a ton of concerts with my best friend in high school. That was like all we did. Another one of those obsessive phases of my life to where like one thing was the thing. But then it just became full on art at one point. I kind of stopped doing that so much. And then I went to college in New York because I spontaneously decided that I needed to live in New York and would settle for nothing else. And then lo and behold, I didn't end up liking the vibe there very much, but hey, it is what it is. Also, like, my experience, like, could be completely different now. I don't know. But I went to college, and your first year at art school, you're supposed to take, like, an assortment of random art classes in order to, I guess, you're supposed to just explore a little bit and see what you like, which I already kind of felt like I had done, but it was, a fun, pretty stress-free, year, all things considered. Like, there was a workload, but I didn't have to be considering what I would eventually be doing with my set of skills professionally. And I was fine with that. Most people were fine with that because they were just freshmen. They were like, oh, I'll probably do this and whatever. You don't really know at like 18, 19. I think that's pretty common. But, this year allowed me to put it off more. And the one thing about my freshman year of college that I now can say, like, thank God that happened, was me getting into this class with this professor who I just love so much. I wish we were like still in touch with each other because she's just so cool and very, very passionate. We had definitely the most work for this class of any other class that I took, but the passion for it was just very much in this woman, and it rubbed off on all of us, and we all just wanted to come in with good work because of that, I think. But the thing that she sort of changed about the way that I started to approach my personal stuff is she introduced this idea of sketching out in like a storyboard kind of format, to where you would just like rapid fire sketch out a bunch of different compositions and then like look back at it later, maybe tweak some stuff and go about it that way. It's just a very good way of planning out like what you're doing, what you're picturing before you actually go about your final piece, I suppose. And yeah, so then like from there my entire sketchbook was just filled with like storyboards, and I would listen to music and just like let my hand do its thing, and you know, sort of get into something of a trance and just sketch some stuff, which when I look back at these now they look pretty fucking cool. It's just like it's a lot to have to fuck with medium and, you know, color and texture and etc etc, but making these is really fun. But yeah, from that made, I guess, my abstract paintings look better because I was forced to consider like, okay, the composition like before I went about doing it. So I just had a clearer understanding of where I was trying to go rather than just putting stuff down, getting confused, and then being like, fuck. So yeah, and then we had a final project in this class. I think we were just supposed to make a book that sort of demonstrated what we had learned. The class was called Light Color Design because we were just exploring elements of light, color, and design pretty loosely. Of course, there were still like set assignments, but it was like a combination of graphic design, drawing, painting, just a bunch of different mediums, which I dug. And I'm pretty sure our final project was just to make a book demonstrating those elements in some kind of way. I just know it was very open-ended, and that I was able to just make 10 pieces about 10 albums. And the way that the book was laid out, it was like on the left page there would be like the album cover, and then the color palettes and descriptive words to describe what I got out of the album, and then lyrics that I was particularly into if they existed. And then on the right side was just the piece, so you could kind of see how all those things like connected together. And a lot of the time it was very emotionally charged, and a lot of those albums had, you know, elements of that depression or desire that I was talking about previously, because I feel like consistently from the, you know, bottom of my heart, that's what shakes me the most. And maybe it'll continue to be like that as I grow. I don't know. But when I think about how do I care about this piece to the maximum extent that I can, those things tend to come up quite a lot. And this book, it was another one of those cases to where like only like half the pieces were ones that I still care about to this day or think were successful. But I guess I was more aware of like whether a piece was going anywhere. So like if I could tell that one of the pieces wasn't going to be one of the better ones or one of the ones that I liked more, I would just move on, or like, you know, make it look presentable, but accept it, which I think like I could kind of learn something from now. Like I wish that I had this instinct still to just accept it, but instead I get, you know, I just spiral into overthought about every single thing that I do. But that was a thing. And I also remember that just I don't know. I just remember very vividly making the pieces and being up till like 4 or 5 in the morning every night and just thinking about it constantly. And that was, I guess, the first time that I kind of started pushing it health wise. And like every waking moment, I was just thinking about, making them. Specifically the Depression Cherry piece, which is still my favorite. But yeah, I mean, it's just a double-edged sword because my passion was like up here, but it ultimately like I couldn't live like this. But it felt really satisfying and personal. So, and one thing that I haven't even mentioned yet is reviewing. Whew. I have so much to say about this and how I got started and everything that I've learned through it and how it's helped me progress. I I had, that sort of music nerd bug, for sure. But it was really reaching like a peak in college, around the time that I started my blog initially in, I think, November of 2017. And it was more of that understanding that, hey, you're gonna look like an idiot when you start this. Like, I kind of just knew deep down that, because I didn't really know how to fucking write an album review. But when I stumbled upon, like, Rate Your Music and Anthony's channel, and I had this mutual friend in high school who was also very music obsessed, and it would sort of rub off on me whenever it was the three of us hanging out. Once the idea of that and people like that who care so much about developing a rich background knowledge of this thing that also, is tied into their feelings, their heart, became really inspiring. I would think about it all the time. And yeah, the idea of doing something similar was like, just, I felt like I had to do it at some point. It just hooked me in and would just consume my thoughts all the time. In class, even in LCD, I would be kind of thinking about albums in the back of my head. And that was always a thing in college. And also at this point in college, I will try not to bore you with the details too much, but I was at another one of those, like, ground zeros to where I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. I just left, all of the friends that I had in high school, which I may not have even really, I was majority not even that close to anyway. I left all my friends. I had just broken up with my boyfriend also, around November. And the friends that I had started to make in college, I didn't really feel like I was clicking with in the same way that I hoped we would in the beginning. Because, when you start college, it's just like a bunch of people talking to each other, and you can like settle into a group, but then like later realize these people aren't actually for me. And that was happening just all at once. And I knew that I had nothing, or it felt like I just had nothing, and also that I had nothing to lose. So I just remember the first time I ever showed anyone a review of mine, which again, I was aware probably sucked, but I just decided to fucking try it, was Utopia by Bjork. You could not pay me to read this review now, but I reviewed it and I posted it on my like Instagram story that all my everyone from high school followed me on. And I just remember that for the following 2 days there was this like raging panic in my stomach because I knew there were specific people who would be like, what the fuck does she think she's doing? But I didn't care. I mean, I cared, obviously, because I was panicking, But I knew that I wanted it enough to just bear it. And I don't know. That's like the most important thing that I've ever done for myself, I think. So that's pretty cool. Um, and then I kept doing it, and that was when sort of the look of my life changed because I had like so many things to balance because I wanted to have a consistent schedule going so that I didn't just sort of like get lazy and stop doing it. Like I felt very serious about again making this like the one thing that was everything to me and just would help make the world much more bearable. And I decided I'm going to review an album every week, and I stuck to that. And they were all written until eventually I decided that YouTube is a lot more personal, and it's hard to get past that because I just noticed that through writing you could only communicate so much, or so I thought at the time. So even though I was terrified of being on camera, and the idea of that, and it was a pain, still kind of is a pain, the whole process of making a YouTube video, having a plan, editing, it just sucks sometimes. But I decided it was worth it because the more I did this, the more I realized I can't be doing anything else. Like, I have to keep this going. And I don't know, listening to albums continues to feel like just food for my brain all the time, and it continues to be exciting no matter what, with the exception of my recent burnout. But it just feels really essential that I keep doing this because the reasons why I love it just... I feel like every day I realize more how much I fucking love doing this and having a voice in this. And anyway, I will move on. So after I started my YouTube channel, that became a big thing that I was trying to prioritize. So like the spring of 2018 was when I was making this book, and I had just started uploading to YouTube too, and that's when the stress began. And then shit got real my second year of college. This was when my dreams went to die. So if anything, my first year of college just made me more passionate about painting as a medium and all of the freedom that it gave me. And I had developed this sort of niche that I was very attached to when it came to creating. And but at the same time I knew like, hey, there's like really no real world application for what you're doing. So I was like, okay, I will try to go into graphic design and wrap my head around that. This didn't really work. I mean, I tried, but I don't really have an eye for design, and it didn't feel right the whole time. And I think a lot of that is, again, just because I became so attached to my means of creating and trying to detach myself from like pretty much everything that made me care about art in the first place, which I know design isn't really art. That's what they tell you anyway. There's some middle ground there, but ultimately, like, corporate design, yeah, there's nothing artistic about it. Doing that, trying to collaborate with people specifically, because that's a big thing in corporate design, just, it didn't work. It felt soul-sucking. I would rather just do something professionally that doesn't sort of, that doesn't, intersect with this part of me, because creating in a way that I like don't feel fully invested in like that just feels a lot worse and more wrong to me than just keeping the two separate, if that's what needs to happen. The first semester wasn't that bad, honestly, but what was bad was the workload, because I was still fully like trying to do YouTube. So it was like three things. Like I was trying to keep painting, and I was trying to keep doing YouTube and get better at it with each video that I made. And I had this college major, like what I was supposed to be doing, which at Pratt was super heavy on the workload. Like, if you go to a school like this, I don't know if this is the case with college in general. It probably depends on the major and where you go, but it has to be kind of your whole life if you want to be successful at it, or like get anything out of the program, really. Like, you're spending all of your time working on stuff for class, and there really are no exceptions. And me trying to juggle those three things just, like, I don't know, it was really difficult. And I feel like I changed as a person too, for the worse during this time. I tried to maintain my friendships, but I was just drowning in stress all of the time, trying to sort of maintain all of these things at once. And yeah, I just remember this is where shit kind of got dark. And at the same time, some of the paintings I made in this phase were like some of my favorites that I ever made. Like, there were the two Boris paintings, and I was gonna do a whole series for Replica by One and Tricks Point Never, which is my favorite album. But I didn't like finish it. But some of the pieces that I did make, I still really love. There was this one for Birth of a New Day that was alright. But yeah, I think those ended up really good. And it was funny because I had to make them in like Pratt's basement in the residence building where I was, because we weren't allowed to paint in our rooms, and there were just like cockroaches everywhere and shit, and it was all sweaty and gross, and it would have been at like 3 a.m. when I was trying to juggle like a class assignment with it as well. And I just think it's cool that I was that motivated to still do it. The second semester sucked a lot more because I decided in the beginning of the second semester that I didn't want to pursue graphic design, period, which is, I still think, was the absolute correct decision. And then I just had to do the semester because my parents had already paid for me to be there. And I guess I didn't know if I would be going back to school at any point. So it made sense to get the credits. So that whole time I couldn't upload to YouTube or Paint, really, because the workload was so much. And it just sucked because I had to be there with full focus on something that I knew wouldn't be relevant in my future, or I had a strong feeling wouldn't. So that happened. And then I left college. I was in England for 3 months over the summer with my boyfriend at the time. And what it came down to with painting was that it was just a little bit too inconvenient to keep doing that. And ultimately, I felt like I was in a place to where I wanted to prioritize YouTube more. So all I did that summer was make reviews at his place, which was quite fun. But it's kind of funny that, I don't know, I just kind of stopped painting by accident almost. And then it never felt completely necessary to go back. Because it was around this time that I felt like my reviews started to become more my own and more expressive, and I felt like there really were no rules in a way that I hadn't felt before. And that reviewing had the potential to scratch really every itch that painting had, because I took a more visual sort of approach to describing what I got out of music. Like, a lot of it was still relating to synesthesia in the same way that my paintings did. And I remember it was around the time of my Boards of Canada Best to Worst that I realized I could write anything, like, it's fine. Music is super subjective. Like, there are just a million things that you could say about music. There are a million different ways to listen to music. I feel like in the earlier days of my reviews, for pretty much every album that I was talking about, there was some detail that I was leaving out, because I thought that it was a little bit too subjective. But I think that you can reach a sweet spot. Like, I think that what makes a review good is a pretty much medium balance between just cold hard analysis, and understanding the artist's intent, and all the different ways that what they're doing could be taken, and then, I mean, the color of the review, in my opinion, comes from the critic's personal connection to it. And now I try to sort of approach every album I listen to with the question, like, how could this be relevant to me, theoretically? And I think that that's what allows me to experience it the most vividly. And then, I don't know, I try to invite in every single thought that I have, every response I have to it, and then later I take a step back, I understand what's bullshit and what isn't, and then I just take it further and further and further, and keep thinking about it until I feel like I can't fucking think about it anymore. And I mean, there are so many aspects to my reviews that I've tried to make a thing. Like, I've tried to use weird vocabulary and a lot of imagery and kind of a poetic-ish angle. I don't necessarily know if I think my reviews are actually poetic, but I've always written like journal entries that sound very overly emotional and melodramatic. And I'm constantly just like writing in my notes app. I have been for like years and years, just a bunch of emotional shit that's in my brain. And I started to realize that when I approached albums in context of, you know, how and why and in what way do I care, those things, like those naturally emotional parts of me just came out. And a lot of it, like the imagery, just kind of relates back to this synesthesia that I've sort of always been trying to incorporate into my work since I started painting about albums as well. And reviewing's like a perfect middle ground. It's like, if I kept painting all the time, I think I would probably just be drowning in my emotions constantly, but this is like a middle ground. And when it comes out, it just naturally comes out, and I put it in the review, and there it is. Sometimes it's nice to sort of just take a step back out of that and try to learn, honestly. And I don't think I ever enjoyed learning as much as I have in like the past year, just trying to learn for myself, over like trying to force myself to care about gen eds or whatever. And also there's just this like grander sense of fulfillment when I'm always working towards learning more about music. Feels like every year that passes, I'm a little bit better at doing what I do, and I just love the feeling of that so much. And shout out to everyone who I've met through this, because you truly make it worth it. I was talking to one of my friends, online friends, recently about something. It's like, a lot of why you become interested in the things that you're interested in, not all of it, but there is a big part of it that just lies in the desire to know other people who are interested in that thing. And I know that's why I had that extra motivation to take this as far as I could, because I just wanted to get through to people and develop connections. And yeah. I will say, though, that getting on camera and speaking very much goes against the way that I'm wired as a human being. It is very hard for me to record some days. Or I think I'm getting better at it, but it always takes energy out of me to do. And actually, I'm glad that I'm challenging myself to do that, because I feel like I'm so much better at just talking to people now, just because I started a YouTube channel. And I feel like I've addressed one of my biggest fears head on, and that will continue to help me wherever I go in life. And of course, I'm still an awkward piece of shit, but there's always more progress to be made, I guess. So yeah, I think that's everything I have to say. I never talked about the fact that it is like I'm just stuffing in as many big and cool and interesting words into my reviews as I can, but that's very intentional. That's very intentional. Just look at people like Aesop Rock and Milo, who that's their whole thing, and it's like the coolest thing ever. So why not do that in a music review? Anyway, I think that's everything. I don't know where I'm gonna go from here. And again, a lot of this video is to just sort of help me analyze what the fuck's going on, what's been going on, where I could go. But yeah, I'm not sure. It seems like I need to change something, but I don't know what. That's mostly just to avoid stress. I want to honestly find a way to talk about a greater quantity of albums, and if that means roundups or reviews that aren't perfect, that might be where I need to go, because when I go so in depth to one record, it's awesome. It's really fulfilling, honestly, and it makes me feel like I've extracted the maximum amount of meaning that I could from that one thing. But I feel like I've sort of missed the quality of me that I used to have, to where I wanted to just binge albums for the fun of it and talk about them casually. And if I could incorporate that into this channel, I would love to. So yeah. And the idea of actually sticking with something, because, you know, this whole video has been like, I was doing this, then this, then this, then this. The idea of this being the one thing that I truly put all of myself into and get great at is very appealing to me. I just need to find a way to work it into my schedule and not kill myself over it. So yeah, that's it. I'll see you whenever I see you, the next time I see you. And thanks so much for watching. I hope you got something out of it. I don't know why you watched the whole thing, because this is just a shit ton of me talking about myself. I don't know why this is relevant to you, but thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And I'll talk to you later.